Now, the prosecution and the defense in the Zimmerman State, Florida versus Zimmerman trial, the murder of Trayvon Martin, I find the opening statements were very interesting, but the prosecution who started off by repeating his cursing and so forth to these white women who it would seem were already in love with Zimmerman and don't believe nothing. I mean, he started off wrong because the cursing these people coiled up. Now, on the other hand, the defense came on and tried to endear himself to these women. He started off a story which, as mothers, they might have played with the kids or their parents might have played with them. And as I hear Juror B37 speak, she's speaking like a little child, you know, like all the young girls who speak on the street and in classes. This is the same way she's speaking. It looks as if she hasn't grown up as yet. And so it worked. And he introduced this and left it as a cliffhanger, same thing they teach them in school in literature. He opened it with a fascinating story, sort of, and continued as he even indicates to them, you follow this case and we'll continue it. And so they follow this case, and even evidence that was kind of objective and submitted, they don't believe it. They more believe exactly what the defense was saying. And so listen to this clip, and this journalist, she thought it was trivial and thought it might have fallen flat, but it did work, and it was a great strategy. Now, it seems as if, you know, he understands where people are, and I'm not sure if there were men where he would have played the same knock-knock game. But I know my continuing theme is that the education and what they've done to us here with these jokes and the various TV shows, Scooby-Doo and Sesame Street, we're at a level where you got to come like a child to really be able to persuade folks. If you come too heavy with a bunch of statistics and so on, you'll lose people very easily.
A dramatic opening this morning to the second-degree murder trial of George Zimmerman, accused of fatally shooting 17-year-old Trayvon Martin. Zimmerman has pleaded not guilty, claiming self-defense. The prosecution gave its opening statement first, with Assistant State Prosecutor John Guy going right at Zimmerman's motivation.
Punks. These they always get away. Those were the words in that grown man's mouth as he followed in the dark a 17-year-old boy who he didn't know. Ladies and gentlemen, the truth about the murder of Trayvon Martin is going to come directly from his mouth.
Don West, co-defense counsel for George Zimmerman, went second. The initial part of his statement was objected to by the prosecution as it pertained to West's personal family. He then went on to tell this joke.
Knock, knock. Who's there? George Zimmerman. George Zimmerman, who? All right, good. You're on the jury. Nothing? That's funny. After what you folks have been through the last 2 or 3 weeks? Let's get on to, however, the serious business of why we're here.
Joining us now is MSNBC legal analyst Lisa Bloom. Lisa, thank you for being here.
Hi.
That opening. Huge contrast between the prosecution, which came in blazing, F-bombs from the start, very dramatic. The presentation was almost cinematic, the way they kind of broke down what happened in those minutes between Trayvon Martin going to the 7-Eleven and then confronting George Zimmerman, and the much more muted presentation of the defense, which started off with a very off-color sort of joke.
An inauspicious beginning for Don West. I mean, you don't want to tell a joke that falls flat, that you have to remind the jury, no, it's funny. So that's not a good beginning. But I have to say, having watched an hour and 45 minutes of it, and they're now on the lunch break, he's going to continue after lunch, he certainly did improve. And what he's doing is laying out his case bit by bit, minute by minute, even second by second. The prosecution, of course, wants to be fiery. The prosecution wants to get the jury enraged at what George Zimmerman did. The defense wants to calm everybody down and have them look at the evidence bit by bit.
Right, and just talk to me about sort of the atmospherics here, because you have an all-female jury.
Yes.
You have 5 of the 6 are non-minority. You have a case in which you've got 2 minorities, essentially, on trial, 2 men on trial, all women. Give me the dynamics of how that you think would play. Does it play to the prosecution or to the defense?
Well, the prosecution wanted to get rid of 2 of these jurors, and that was denied. So there's 2 women on this jury that the prosecution does not
Now,
like.
one of them said
probably
that the
more
protests-
significant than their gender and race is that
Right.
fact.
Now, you had one of those 2, juror 37, who had called the protests riots. That was one of the 2 that they
and
wanted
they were not
off.
riots; they were peaceable demonstrations.
Right.
I think
And
that's
the-
a significant difference.
And the other one was someone who questioned why Trayvon Martin was out at night.
Right, and it was 7 p.m. and he went to the 7-Eleven to get Skittles and an iced tea, so there's certainly nothing wrong with that. And to imply that he put himself in the wrong place at the wrong time sounds like victim blaming, I would say, to some. You know, let's talk about some of the high points, though, for just a moment. I think the prosecution did a very good job. You played that clip of the profanity, and when you hear the actual profanity, it's even more powerful than hearing it bleeped, as we have to do. You know, that's out of George Zimmerman's mouth on the line with the police non-emergency number. He'd never met Trayvon. He's just walking down the street, and he's already insulting him, using very strong language, saying that he was suspicious. I think that sounds bad for him. And, of course, that George Zimmerman's story is not consistent with the DNA evidence. That's something the prosecution argued, I think, very powerfully, because Zimmerman said that Trayvon had put his hands over Zimmerman's nose and mouth. Zimmerman's nose was bleeding at that point. Why is there no blood on Trayvon's hands? No blood under his fingernails? No blood on the cuffs of either of the 2 shirts that he was wearing? Strong points, I think, for the prosecution. On the defense side, though, the defense is playing the calls, including the call where George Zimmerman sounds very, very calm on the phone with the police officer. George Zimmerman's injuries show that he was beaten up. That's what the defense says. And Zimmerman, of course, does have some injuries. And that Zimmerman fully cooperated with the police. From the very beginning, he did not lawyer up. He submitted to every test, every interview that they asked of him. And that the police did not arrest him that night. The police initially came to the same conclusion the defense comes to.
Right. And were you surprised that Don West proactively said that Zimmerman was following Trayvon Martin? I thought their presentation was the opposite.
Good catch. And I think that's something that's inconsistent with at least one of the statements that George Zimmerman made.
Yeah, and there was one other thing I found surprising. It was the first time that I'd heard this evidence of the body being the body being found face down. Do you think it's significant, the positioning of the body?
We had heard that. Right. It's going to be very significant because, of course, there were 2 men there. Only one survived. We have Zimmerman's story. We don't know what Trayvon Martin's story would have been. But Zimmerman's story is he was on the bottom. Trayvon Martin was on top of him. That Trayvon was reaching for the gun, threatened his life. He took the gun and shot him. Trayvon then fell face down, and Zimmerman got out from underneath. I mean, all of those details are going to be tremendously important.
Lisa Bloom, really looking forward to having you analyzing this trial. Great details this morning. Thank you so much.
And so what I want us to do now, I want us to play this knock-knock joke. I want us to see how we could take this to, you know, maybe how the women were taking it and maybe how I would take it. For example, I will come up with knock-knock. Who is there? OJ. OJ who? OJ Simpson. Who is OJ Simpson? Can't remember Goldman and Nicole Brown, the people that they allege I killed. Oh, you! Well, you're supposed to be in jail. How you could be knocking on my door? Ha 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 ha. Then next one. Knock knock. Who is there? Your roommate from college. Which one? Derek. Oh yeah, I remember you. You want us to play some scooting today? No? Oh, okay. Bye.